Hi everyone, today we're going to look at Castle Combe, go for a little wander and see if we can find evidence of ancient structures. So we'll just try and zoom in on Castle Combe, just have a quick idea about where we are. We're going to walk onto this golf course for a tiny bit. Golf courses obviously in the truth community are well known for potentially hiding things that they might not want us to find. So I've made previous videos on this and never uploaded them. I featured them a bit too much. I prefer to be anonymous, to be honest. I'm not in this for anything else than just trying to share some truth. I'd much prefer you guys followed people like Martin Liedke and some of the other truthers rather than me. So in the comments, please share some truthers that have done work on this. Not sure anyone else has done Castle Combe. I just happen to be here at the minute. So in particular, what we're looking at is this area here, which is now a golf course. If we look at satellite imagery, we may be able to get an overview of Castle Combe. And we're going to be starting out around about here. We'll have a little look at the golf course from here. We might wander down. And what I'm trying to get at with this is that Castle Combe is claimed to be a small town, very beautiful, but when tourists go there, they tend to go to this section. Where there literally is no castle. And I don't think many tourists ask, where is the castle in Castle Combe? They don't ask, why is the bed of the river seemingly so even and flat? Why are the banks of the river all built with stone? Why does it seem it's all been constructed? And I don't think really there's much of a desire for the average person to find out these things. I'm going to show you what a Mott and Bailey looks like, and it's my contention that Castle Combe is firstly a Mott and Bailey, but made of stone. I don't know why they've made these ones of wood. These are the classical kind of like Decepticon mainstream ways of hiding truth, but probably more like this one over here. We can see this one is made of red brick, and then it looks like there's been some kind of heat expansion here to cause these red bricks to change into what do they call it, the C14, the carbon 14, which I think could be linked to human blood or the blood of animals, has been drained out of them, and they turn into these kind of limestoney blocks that kind of crumble apart in your hand. The other day I found a limestone block, and I found inside of it this what looks like a metal door key or something. Sorry, or a hinge, or I'm not really sure what that is, but it was inside one of these lime blocks, and it's kind of made of what feels like or what looks like some kind of metal that's since become a bit more stripped, or I don't know, dried out. But yeah, this was inside a limestone block that just crumbled away around it. So it's my contention that Castle Combe is actually a much, much bigger structure that's mostly buried, and the actual nature of Castle Combe is far more giant scale than you'd appreciate from just looking at the village itself, and that it actually is pretty much more like this, where there's a castle and then castle walls, but then it also incorporates the golf course and the river, probably a bit more like this Duffer's Castle, a bit more like this, where the castle walls come all the way around like this and surround the town, and probably surround some fields as well. I'm pretty sure there was a wall around the town. I'll take you walking along some of it, and we'll see. And I think it's probably fairly typical of English towns that they're more like this. It looks like this is either a reconstruction or a painting of what it looks like. So Castle Combe at the minute looks nothing like this because it's covered in vegetation, which might be from the carbon 14 or just whatever, but it's covered in vegetation, so it doesn't look anything like this. It just looks like classic English fields, a bit more like, I guess, this one. It looks more like that in the fact that everything's pretty much covered up with grass and vegetation and trees, and then whatever the event was that happened, the mud flood or the X factor or whatever the event was, has caused it to degrade from perhaps looking like this, which is Warkworth Castle, Mott and Bailey, into looking more like this kind of thing. Anyway, I'm going to pause the video, and the next time I speak to you will probably be on the little trek that we're going on. It's nice to get outside, and I just encourage you guys to take walks and just look at wherever you live, look at it anew, post a video, hashtag it Meltology, mud flood, and let's try and build this community and try and step outside of the mainstream brainwashing media that continually lies to us and tries to make us scared, and let's just discover with wonder the world that we live in and the wonderful past, and then perhaps we can be a part of trying to create some of the best elements of that. Okay, so we're outside now, and we can see that we're at the back of the buildings that I showed you on the map. Everything's beautiful and green. We've got some cows here. Just going to say a quick hello to these guys. Hello guys. We have an old wall there that I'm not sure you can see very well, but we're going to come onto the edge of it, and we're going to come onto the edge of the golf course. You can see the old wall here through there. Just going to keep quiet while we walk past this person. Right. Everything's luscious and green, and the golf course is just ahead of us here. We're going to come up to the edge of this wall now. We'll get a little bit of a closer view of the wall, and you'll see that some interesting features on the wall. I've done a bit of investigating around here before. It's not immediately apparent how gigantic scale the structure is that we're standing on, but you have to take it from me. There's a lot more than meets the eye. So the remnants of something. We've got an old falling apart gate. Still has some ironwork in it. Seems to be some ironwork next to it. The red bricks. Looks like some of it's been reconstructed, not quite sure. It's red on this side, but it was almost limestone coloured on the other side. This path leads onto the golf course, as I'll show you shortly, but I just want to show you that even on these average common little paths that crisscross this whole area, it doesn't take much digging to start finding remnants of old walls just everywhere. And one of the clues is tree roots growing horizontally. So right here you should be able to see that under the tree roots we can usually discover stone, this limestone material, and it was out of this limestone that I just found that bit of metal, and it's the same kind of building blocks that, or the same kind of limestone that forms all of the walls. So it doesn't take much digging to find that we're just on top of limestone everywhere, and often in underneath the trees you can see that. that underneath the tree stumps, and the tree roots, you'll see limestone blocks commonly. I'm not sure if it's here, but if I dug a little bit underneath these roots, most commonly you're going to find limestone blocks everywhere. Or I'm not sure if they're limestone, but they feel pretty porous. Or maybe it's the remnants of red brick. I'm not sure. The red bricks do melted tricks. Okay, now we're on the golf course, or at this side of the golf course. And although it's private, as I said, there are public footpaths. I'm just going to walk alongside of it. And this is the back of the just pointless red brick gate that just seems to be randomly in the middle of nowhere for no good reason. I quite like the iron bits connected to it. Not sure if they had a function. In this ditch here, in the winter when there's not so much vegetation, you can see that it's all lined with brick, all lined with stone. There'll be a section where you can see it, where you can see the stone. But this is the thing with this area in Castle Coombe, and I would argue for many countryside villages in England, Wales, Scotland, and probably all around Europe, that without much digging you can very quickly get down to brickwork. So we're just going to investigate in here, have a quick look, and yeah, underneath you can see quite clearly, even underneath the roots of trees, we have the brickwork. I'll just pull one out. Now the meltology guy would have you believe that this was previously a red brick, and I'm really not sure about that. It's clearly human made, but I'm just not sure that these are all red bricks that have heated and formed into these separate things. I'm not saying it's not, but maybe not. But who knows what happens over time and with enough heat. So those bricks there that I've just shown you, or those stones, that's on a giant scale. No matter how far you walk around Castle Coombe, you can walk for 5 miles around Castle Coombe, and everything you're walking on and everything you're walking around is surrounded by brickwork like that, almost to the point where you start to visualize the Mott and Bailey structures that I was showing you on the internet at the start of this video. And this is the way to search for it in your own locales. Look underneath trees, so big trees, and then look underneath them, and you're going to find walls often enough, especially if the roots are horizontal. Now there's obviously different explanations for this. On a small scale you would just say, yeah, okay, it's an overgrown wall. But this exists on a giant scale in Castle Coombe. I spent a long time walking around here during COVID, and I explored, and I made a bunch of videos about it, which I ended up deleting or just losing because they took up my hard drive space, and I was in them too much. I didn't want to be facing the camera. I think in the truth community, I think some people can get away with being in front of the camera, and other people, work full time, and they don't want to be having to answer awkward questions about why their theories aren't mainstream. So I'm not sure if anyone can decode the symbols on the gates and explain what happened to the walls. I'm not sure whether these are pockets of survival using the meltology theory, or whether they've been built since the disaster on top of the ruins. You just can't tell. So for instance, the brickwork of this place looks pretty similar to the brickwork of that wall that we just saw down the path. Red bricks are everywhere, it's true. So we're on, if you work out where we are on the map of Castle Coombe, we're in quite a sort of like, this is like ground level, but then Castle Coombe dips into a valley. And as I'll show you, there seems to be brickwork almost everywhere you look. Okay, now again, I'm not sure of the background of this wall here. Did it used to be red brick? Can we see red brick there? the red brick transform into this? I'm not sure. It's difficult to tell. You can see what looks like the filler between, and then on other areas you can see red brick. So we see red brick there, we see red brick, we see red brick, or what looks like red brick. So did it transform? Difficult to tell. So that wall, I would argue, continues much further down there. So pocket of survival, possibly. I would argue that England and Scotland, Wales are crisscrossed by an unbelievable amount of stonework. All the fields, stone. So as we walk down into Castlecombe village, you'll see we have the stone wall here, and then beneath this vegetation is also stone wall. So the stone wall, and on the other side too. Doesn't look like it, but once you dig around in there, you find that this is stone too, and then there's stone on the upper level too. And this continues right the way down into the village. So hundreds of meters of stonework on both sides, on multiple levels. You can see it here. You can see the trees start interacting with the stone, where the trees have just grown above the stone. So there seems to be a period of time where this was just allowed, or this just happened. Not sure how old the trees are, some of them are quite young. But literally, there is millions of tons of stone in Castlecombe. Some of the stonework survives quite nicely, like here. And then further up there, it's covered in so much you can't really see it. But this stonework here is surviving nicely. And again, it's both sides of the road. And the stones are obviously quite high. I'm 6 foot. This must be about 6 foot here already. This side, it seems to be a higher, 10 foot maybe. And once we look inside, we can see what have we got. A similar kind of brickwork. Again, trees growing over the bricks. And both sides of the road. So I'm not sure how deep this really goes. On this side they've managed to sort of patch up some of it, or maybe this is a pocket of better survival, and put a little plaque here. A little bench. Got some quite intricate little archway bits here. They're saying this is from the Jubilee in 1977, so maybe they patched it up. But then there's a wall going up at the top there too, so you can just sort of make out through the trees. So again, if you look underneath the roots, you'll find they grow on top of brick. And this was the field where we saw the sheep shortly 5 minutes ago. And again, it's brickwork. It's constructed all the way up on different levels. And then you find the same happens here. Higher up there's going to be another wall that links this all together. So if you saw this from a bird's eye, if you were following this on Google Maps, what just looks like an English village, English countryside, actually is constructed, largely landscaped on a much, much bigger scale. At the back of these houses, they sort of go into wall. Can't see it now because we're in spring. It goes into wall. There's wall at the back there. So I'm just going to walk up this path. We're going to go on a higher route up to the village. We'll come back to the village later. The village is just down here, and it's again wall, wall, wall. But I'm just going to take you up here. We're going to rise up maybe at about 100 feet, and you'll see either side we're going up between what looks like, I don't know, some part of a castle perhaps, where both sides is constructed wall with trees growing over and around and inside the brickwork. It's everywhere. It's not natural. And it's on a massive scale. Both sides are taller than me. They're about 10 feet high on both sides, and we don't know how deep they are. It looks like we're walking on top of a lot of brickwork too. It's just, again, unremarked upon. The tourists come here, they see it, they don't ask themselves, what is a massive tree doing built upon the stonework? How did that happen? Why didn't they stop that happening? There must have been a period of time where they just didn't care it was happening, I guess. So if you see horizontal rootwork growing on top of rock, maybe it was old wall. And then pretty rapidly it gets covered. So sometimes you'll have to dig away to find the brickwork. But this is massive, isn't it? It's called Castle Combe because I think the whole thing's castle. I think the whole village and the surrounding areas were all part of the castle. It was a huge structure, a castle, motte and bailey. Look at the height of that wall. And behind that wall, we're now up about, 40, 50 feet. We're now getting up to the road level again. So you'll see the field here. This is the road level, I guess. And Castle Combe is much lower down. Now this is a nice big stone. Left over. I'll put my foot there next to it. Get a sense of scale. Not going to hazard a guess of what that is or why that was there. See evidence of other big stones. Very much doubt that was red bricks that are all heated and formed together, but that's what the meltology guys would have you believe. The geologists would say it was some kind of natural formation. So we're going to walk along the side of the village, and I'll come back when we can have a look down into the village, but it's my belief we're walking on a giant wall, effectively. A wall that perhaps was 100 feet high, surrounding the village and the motte and bailey. Okay, so we're still on the east side of the village. We're a little bit further up, and I just want to walk down and show you a little bit of evidence for why I think we're walking on top of old stone walls and structures. So what I'm looking for is evidence that we're on top of stone. And sometimes the best way is looking under the tree roots. So I've noticed a fallen tree. Oop, here's some stone here. Looks like it's the burial site for some dogs. Sorry about that, dogs. But they've used some of the stones that we find lying around this place. So I'm just going to look at, here we go. Here's some stone left over. So just randomly stone, destroyed stone, just in the middle of nowhere on top of this hill. And then what I'm hoping for is a tree that's fallen over with its roots upturned, so I can show you that underneath the trees is stone, but it looks like this stone's going all the way down, possibly to the village. Again, almost inexplicable how much stonework there is around here. They're very good at cutting down the old trees in England and all around the world. They don't seem to like old trees. They don't seem to allow trees to get old. I'm sure that's some kind of energy system, or somehow the trees are one living organism that all connect together. And the older they get, like the Ents in Lord of the Rings, possibly the more powerful they get, or here we go, roots upturned, and underneath the roots, stone. Now, to the untrained eye, this bit looks all messy and just like random stone, but then you see more orderly stone that gives you more of an idea that it just looks like those stone walls we were at very short period of time in the video. I'm going to go down to this route here just to see if the theory holds true. Are we going to find more stone? Well, we start to get the idea that when we're walking around hills and valleys in England, are we walking on ancient stone structures? So again, not conclusive, but trust me, I've walked around enough of this town to see conclusive proof of it. But yeah, there we go, stones again, looking very much like the same stones they've used to build. In fact, we have a hole in that stone there. But as you can see, the roots are all growing around the same kind of stones used in the construction. Okay, I'm going to go back up to where the path is, but just bear in mind that the village is another 100 or so feet down below us, and my contention is that we're built on top of stone walls, that the Motte and Bailey surrounding the town. Again, you've got to ask yourself why. Were the Nephilim walling themselves in, or were their descendants walling themselves in to protect themselves from what? From flood, mud flood, from barbarians at the gate, from us? Difficult to understand why they needed such epic scale buildings and structures back in the day, and the actual phenomenal scale of engineering. Just ask yourself, when you go past all of the fields in England, you're driving in the countryside, look at all of the stone walls. We're talking trillions of individual pieces of stone. Why did they do that? Why did they need stone walls? Was it to prevent mud floods? To prevent liquefaction? What was it for? How deep do those stone walls go? Has anyone done any research on that? Do the stone walls go deeper? Is there any evidence the stone walls used to be red brick? I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to pause now and rejoin you a bit later on with more evidence. Just going to show you again. This side of the wall, the west side, it's a circle around the whole village, but on the west side at the minute, this is kind of ground level of the nearing surrounding countryside. But then Castle Combe is in this big valley, this big dip. Must be 200 feet below us right now where the village is, and I contend that it's stone wall all the way up in kind of different layers. I'm not sure if it was the same there, and maybe the mud flood, this side rose up and it didn't quite completely swamp the valley below. I just don't know. But on this side and then all the way around Castle Combe, it's a bit like Z for Zachariah. Have you ever read the book? There's a village in a valley that escapes the effects of nuclear war. Might be an allegory for escaping the effect of the mud flood. Not sure, but Castle Combe definitely is a place where you could film Z for Zachariah, because it's nestled in the valley. Any second I'll be able to show you where the village is. Random bit of tech here. Not great signal down in the valley, interestingly. Doesn't get the signals. Maybe a good place to avoid 5G. If 5G can be weaponized, not sure if it can. Please don't ban this video. I'm not saying it can. Just questioning. Questioning is what I do. So yeah, they chop trees down once they get too big. They don't like big trees all the way around the realm. Once trees get too big, they manage them in inverted commas So if I was to scramble down here and look underneath these trees, you would see evidence of the brickwork all the way down. I've satisfied myself that that's how it is. I'm not sure if you can see through there, but that's the manor house of the village down there. You can just about see it. Just going to do a little bit of an explanation of kind of what led me on to exploring this. It was just seeing these tree systems, the roots going across the path. I just wondered why it was happening so much and why they weren't just going straight down. And I just found once I dug around underneath these roots, I would generally find, it's better when it's wet, I would generally find the brick, the stonework. The stonework would be underneath the root systems, and it was just everywhere. It was just all around for miles, all around the village. It's a favourite place of mine to come and walk around. And I think, like the rest of the realm, Wiltshire is a really good example of a place that is just sitting on top of the ancient world. And the ancient world is not in random locations, it's everywhere. Just literally everywhere. Just look around you. I challenge you, go out to your local park, your local golf course, and just look and explore and see what you find and share it. So we're still west of the village. You can see the sun setting there in the west, and we're coming down now. I would say a rampart of the castle, some kind of rampart system. And I think all the way along, about 20 feet down, you can see another rampart there. So it's almost like a staggered, almost like a pyramidal sort of structure of staggered steps to get down. And another higher level up there, which is topped off by a stone wall. So we're now coming down off that top level, and we're coming down this section. Could have been an old road, wide enough. And again, you see the root systems all coming over this path, which just led me to believe and to find out and to discover that underneath the path it is stonework. You can see the stone now. And then this side, that's the east side, so the Bybrook River, which leads onto the famous Avon River. The Avon River, the Bybrook, goes down here, and it is a managed, and I think it's a constructed river system, a little bit like a brook, and it's flat at the bottom of the river, and on either side of the river, all the way along, it's constructed with stonework, all the way along. It's perfectly flat along the bottom, and it goes all the way around back to the golf course and where the Mott and Bailey are. And I would argue that the other side is also wall, it's going up about 150 feet wall. Now there is a OS map that shows there's a Roman villa on top of that hill on that side, and then the OS map shows you the Mott and Bailey. If anyone wants to come and explore it, just do it at time when the golf course is closed. I'm not advocating you trespassing by any means, but there are footpaths, public footpaths you can use. And let's say you got a little bit lost and you strayed and found the Mott and Bailey. It's nowhere near anyone playing golf, so you're not going to disturb them. Oh, sorry, I got lost. So again, stonework along here, and then down into where the valley is, and again managed, all the managed landscape, again tree roots growing over the stone, all the way down. Again, roots unable to penetrate down because of the stone. Again, a clear sign, a good little clue for any of you trying to search for the stonework. The stonework is always very close to the roots. So all you need to do is wait for it to be a little bit wet, just bring a little trowel or something out and just have a little poke around, and you're almost certainly going to discover the stonework. So I've also walked, I'm not going to do it today, but I also walked all the way around. I've done so many expeditions here. Walk all the way around the other side, and again you'll find the same thing, stone, 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 all the way around for miles, absolute miles around this whole Castle Combe complex. So I'm going to take you to one more bit of evidence, because I'm pretty sure there's going to be a lot of sceptical people, and that's totally fine. Stick to the mainstream, stick to the stories that you were told. It's comfortable for you. It's challenging to think that the world might be different than you've been taught. It's a challenging concept, isn't it? What if things aren't as we've been told? Some people feel lost by that. Some people hate the mere thought that could be true, that there could be another explanation for World War One. They even admit World War One as people were striking in Britain. There was a whole series of strikes. The ruling classes could no longer control the poor people working in their factories. They wanted better conditions. And lo and behold, the controllers decide, let's send all the young men to war and call them cowards and give them white feathers if they're not willingly going off to war. And then the empires are consolidated down. The Ottoman Empire supposedly disappears. The Austro-Hungarian Empire, the German Empire, all supposedly beaten by the British Empire and the Americans who joined in. But is that the real truth? From the Second World War, recent documents show that so many German oligarchs made coin from the Nazis. BMW, Mercedes, Bayer Pharmaceuticals. The oligarchs made out like bandits. This is a cute little spot. Isn't that sweet? I've no idea what that book is. A bit spooky, isn't it, really? So we're just on the more south-east side of Castlecombe now. I just wanted to show you the amount of tree roots growing horizontally all the way around. I'm going to take you up through a section that I think reminds me of Lord of the Rings, where, was it Faramir or Boromir, one of them died in Lord of the Rings, where he ended up saluting Aragorn. This section really reminds me of that. There's a house down there in the valley, I think there's an old mill near it. So I'm just going to walk up here. I might pause it in a minute, but there's a section that I think proves my point about the scale of the walls. You can see the stonework underneath the roots all the way through this whole area. There's a really nice bit at the top there where we'll just be able to see some of the stonework pointing through. I've shown it to friends before and they disagree and say it just looks natural, but I just disagree with them. I think that once you combine it with the evidence that I've already shown from everywhere else. So there's a man down there, but that's where we've just been, a jogger down there you can see. So we must have walked up about 20-30 feet, and up ahead of us I think you can see the scale of the wall work, and my contention is that the mud flood poured over but didn't destroy the walls enough for the whole thing to be levelled and buried, because the walls held firm for the most part. So I think that section there could be proof. Of how big the wall is. You see the tree roots growing over all the way along, all the way around, and all the way through the last couple of miles. Right here, tree roots over rock. And that what looks to me like the giant wall that we walked on top of earlier on, but seems to form the whole part of the surrounding area. Everything seems to be built up, made of stone, and it's exactly the same with those the work we saw alongside the road earlier on, which were clearly man-made. But this is huge scale. We're talking, this is about 15-20 feet of wall that I argue would form the entirety of the surroundings of Castle Combe. Now, these bigger rocks confused me previously because they're not the same as the smaller rocks. But the meltology theory would have you believe that they fused together. Interesting little sections there. So did they fuse together? But yeah, hopefully that gives you a sense of the scale. And this wall would continue all the way around, and then on the other side of the valley, and then all the way around for probably a combined total of 3 to 5 miles, completely encircling the entire village, including the Mott and Bailey and the golf course and the village. And then there were towers. If you look at the old map, the history of Castle Combe, there were towers that stretched out. Sorry, towers that were found around. And there's some big old churches that you can look at that I think were part of the same complex, down to a town called Ford. If you look at Ford on the map, if we carried on walking the way we were going, we would have ended up at Ford. And I think Ford is part of the same complex. There's a church just near Ford that I think is part of the same Castle Combe complex. So I think that's pretty much the end of the video. It was nice to get outside. It's a beautiful day. And hope to see you next time.